Hey everybody, welcome to another Professionally Incorrect. I'm Liam Clisham, and today we're going to be doing a quick Houdini displacement tutorial. You might be looking at your screen saying, Liam, that's a really old-ass version of C4D. What are you doing in there? And that's because this awesome guy here, Thanos, aka Motion Punk, has been learning Houdini on the side and posed this question today. How can you quickly and easily set up something like a displacer inside of Houdini? So I thought it would be fun to make this tutorial, and after YouTubing it, I didn't see anyone that's really talked about this in such a quick and easy manner. And two, thought it would be funny to use Thanos' picture and did a quick Google for him and found this awesome thing there. So Thanos, lots of love. I'm sorry for doing this to you, but you posed the question, so I thought it would be fun. Right off the bat, I'm going to tell you all, it is not as straightforward. It's still very easy, but C4D definitely makes this easier as it's all condensed into a single object. We're going to need to use anywhere between 2 and 3 nodes to get this to work properly, which, that's not a lot in Houdini workflow, but it's definitely not a single object. So C4D definitely wins here. So the key parameters that we need to do as we go over to Houdini is use an image to drive displacement, like we've got here. So we move over to the Object tab, be able to set it to planar and orient the displacement any way we want. So just on Y, on Z, on X like we were doing. So those are our key parameters. Texture, orientation, just on X, Y, or Z. I think that's it. Any other things that we were talking about? I don't think so. So before we hop over, I have set up a grid over in Houdini the exact same size, so 400 centimeters, or in Houdini, they use meters, so it's 4 meters, and then 256 segments for both width and height. So let's hop on over. So you see we've got this grid here. I don't know why this keeps popping up right there. There we go. Nope. Go away. No, there we go. Well, we'll just have to deal with that. I don't know what that's about. Okay, cool. Weird Wacom error, I guess. So yeah, 4x4 and 256 by 256. And you'll see that for whatever reason, it faces the normals backwards here, and they're going in this direction. We don't really need to worry about that right now, but it is kind of weird that it does that way. So yeah, got our grid, same size, same everything. So let's break this down a little bit. We want to use a texture, to displace, and orientation. Those 3 things. You might be thinking to yourself, well, okay, maybe we have to use a single node for each one of those. And you're kind of correct, but not quite. So the first thing we do want to look for is a texture. If we hit tab and start typing texture, you probably don't have all these if you've got vanilla Houdini installed. If you don't, you might have some lab stuff from SideFX Labs, which is not anything that we want. And if you have mops installed, you might have this. Otherwise, you're just going to come up with this UV texture, which is not what we want. So if we want to use a texture, how do we get that? And oddly enough, it is called attribute from map. And when we put this down, you'll see why. It's actually called a texture map that it's looking for, not just a texture. Something you just got to keep in mind when you're using Houdini is there's little quirks, I guess is the best way to put it, here and there that just got to memorize, unfortunately. Okay, so we've got our little attribute from map node that will drive displacement. Let's talk about how it's going to do that. So in this slot right here, this is where you get your texture map, which we will eventually point to Thanos's lovely face. Down here, you can select what channel you want to use from it. If you have like an EXR, we don't need any of that. Here's the UV data that needs to go in there, and then the attribute that you're going to export. So right now it's set to CD, which stands for color diffuse, which is the fancy way of saying color inside Houdini. If you're not familiar with attributes, a quick layman C4D breakdown of it is fields on crack. That's it. It is literally fields on crack. It is data that you can manipulate any way that you want, use anywhere in the program. I'm saying anywhere in the program, but in general, anywhere in your node tree, and have it drive whatever you want for the most part. So if you can remember that, you'll be great. Just think of vertex maps and manipulating those over inside C4D with fields. That's basically it. So let's get started and turn this on, and we get these cool bars here, but that's not correct. I'll actually show you what it's supposed to look like. If we rotate it back down to the ZX plane, this is what it's supposed to look like. And you might be thinking, okay, well, why does it look this way? And that's because for whatever reason, it's fine with creating a UV attribute when it's on this plane, but if you switch planes, it wants you to have already provided UVs for it. So that's why I'm saying that we need to technically only use 2, but if you want to do it like this, you need 3 nodes. So fortunately, we need to throw down a UV project, and that's just because Houdini by default doesn't turn on UVs. So if I hit this here, this is our little UV checker, and I turn this on here, see that we get our UVs right there. And then we turn this on and we get this, and that's not correct. And that's just because this hasn't been initialized or scaled correctly. You can see how small these squares are right there. Come over to this initialize tab, hit initialize, and there we go. I'm going to turn this off so we can see it better. And now, no matter what orientation we set the plane to, we can control this. And yep, that's right, it doesn't stick with it when you rotate it this way. So the way around that is to pretty much just use a transform afterwards. So I'm going to go ahead and set this back to our regular format, get this out of there, and use a transform to control how we want to move it. So transform is like that. It'll let you move stuff around in any direction. So if I reset all these, hitting wrong keys, like so, and put this to 90, there you go. You get exactly what we're looking for. I think the correct way is actually going to be -90, since the normals are backwards like we were talking about before. So now that's how you get over that. Again, like I said, technically can do this with 2 nodes, but because of the UV weird operations, it's going to be 3. Okay, so we've got that there. Let's go ahead and put our picture of Thanos in here, or whatever you're using. Click this little button there. Go ahead and find a black and white image, and we're almost there. You might think that we can just go ahead and use this CD attribute. That is not the best practice. One, because CD, or color, is actually a vector over here, so it's representing 3 different things. It's representing R, G, and B, a vector, or X, Y, and Z if you're thinking about positioning, UV, W if you're thinking about UVs, so on and so forth. So we definitely don't need a full vector for manipulating this. We just need a float, a single value here. And the image is going to look the same. Don't need to worry about that at the moment. And the next thing we're going to do is change this source color space from automatic to linear. And what that's doing is just mapping everything from 0 to 1, a linear value. When it's an automatic, you might get some weird values in here. So if I go over to the geometry spreadsheet, which yours should be up here, I like to keep mine docked down here. Pop that open so I can see both at the same time, and you'll see what I mean in just a second. So right now, I've got automatic, linear, changes between 1 and 0 now, where automatic, you get these like weird outliers of 8 and other stuff too. So that's why you really want to make sure you set that to linear. Next thing we're going to do, since I said we should not use CD, and you can even see that it's messing up right here with Houdini, even though we set it to float, it's still coming through as a vector value, we will just need to change this to something else. So like displace. And now we've got that popping up here. The reason why color still exists is because this is set to visualize. If we turn that off, it goes away and then comes back like so. I'm just gonna go ahead and leave it on there for the purposes of looking at this handsome man's face and go ahead and minimize that there. Okay, so almost there, I promise. I know I said this is gonna be a quick tip and it's already 10 minutes into it. We're almost there. So next part is throwing down a attribute adjust vector, and you can see that this is contextual, so you can just kind of shorthand it. I did attrib and then add, and still isolates everything that you want. So we want this person right here. I said person, but it's just a node. So you might be thinking, vector, Liam, you just told us to change this to a float. Yes, but remember what I was just talking about, how color and position and all these other examples are actually vectors. So we're going to be manipulating the position data, which is a vector, and that's why we want to use this adjustment on vectors. So there's a lot of information in here. I've had some other videos that I go over some of the adjust nodes. I'm gonna gloss over this real quick just to keep this video short, but up here is the attribute that you're gonna put in that you want to manipulate. Attribute class is the, I guess, for lack of a better word, the class that you want to manipulate. So right now it's manipulating points, can manipulate vertices, primitives, and then detail. If you're new to Houdini, a detail is basically the entire object, for lack of a better, easy way to put it. We're just going to leave it to point for now. This component scope is the orientation that we are worried about. So if we come back into here, it's just like dropping down here and picking your orientation. Over in Houdini, you can say manipulate all of them or just pick one to manipulate. And because of how this is oriented in the viewport, we're going to manipulate Z. Yes, just making sure. Yeah, definitely Z. Okay, so down here are all the adjustment things. You do adjustments for direction and length, or just direction only, length only. Not going to get into that. Different operators, add, subtract, multiply, etc. And then adjusting with what? So right now it's set to a constant. So if I go like this, oh, you know what I didn't do? I didn't update my position up here. So before this even shows up, we need to change this. So by default, it's set to V, which is velocity inside of Houdini. If you get into Pyro and stuff, it's going to actually be vel sometimes. Don't need to worry about that here. We're going to change this to P, which stands for position. A lot of these are really easy to remember. I know it's probably daunting being new to Houdini and coming over from C4D. It's like, oh, something else I have to memorize. You'll get there. I promise that they stick a lot better than you think. So P for position, totally easy to remember. Now, if I start to manipulate this, you'll see it starts to move all the points on Z, or Z if you're not in the United States. We can do random as well, like so. So just manipulating those randomly on the Z, and noise, like so. And you can control different things here, alligator or cellular stuff. We aren't going to use any of these. We are going to use a constant. And you might be thinking, okay, now how do we use our displacement for that? It's a little bit weird with the attribute adjust vector. In all the other adjustment ones, it lets you choose up at the very top. So if I throw down a float here and compare, you'll see we have this blend right here, and you change this to use attribute, and your blend attribute would be disp, which we created. For the vectors, they have hidden it. It's actually a post process. I'm not sure why that is. Seems like a weird continuity thing between the nodes, but that's just how it is. So I'm gonna go ahead and come in here, come over to the side, select blend by attribute, and then displace, like so. and now we don't have anything. And in a second, like so, we get our displacement. Not exactly what we had over in C4D. Now, what is happening? So, kind of get what we want, right? Not exactly. So, anything that is gray is going to be 0. Or sorry, anything that is black is going to be 0. Anything that's gray is going to be in between. Anything that's white is going to be full displacement, like so. So I think the difference is that this is set to centered initially, but I had already changed it. Okay, that's my bad. At the very beginning of the tutorial, I meant to leave this as intensity centered. So that's why I thought it was looking different. I did not do that. I was messing around. I had already shifted it to intensity. So intensity uses that right. It goes from a 0 to 1 linear space. If you have it set on intensity centered, your gray space is actually going to be 0, and then like no displacement. Black goes down to -1 and white goes up to +1. I believe I'm saying that right. As you can see, using a very old version of Houdini, or sorry, C4D, and just kind of forget some of those details now that I've been in Houdini so long. But anywho, I guess we do have it looking the exact same way that we had it before. So we just come over here, and then we can see Thanos screaming into a lotion bottle, and all displaced and fun. So just like in C4D, we want to be able to move it on different scopes. So we can move that over here, or orientations, and then we set this up like that. And we get weird like glitchy effect. Or if we come over here, do it like that. Or, I mean, I guess one benefit to doing it inside Houdini is you can do multiple ones at once, however you want, in many different ways, and get weird looking stuff like that. All right, think that covers everything. So just a quick reminder of steps. Throw down your grid or whatever object. You can throw down a sphere in here too. And just make sure you have a ton of points going on, say like 64. You can use that as well. But throw down your geometry, set up your attribute from map, make sure that you do your transforms afterwards, so that way you can use the UVs that this builds on this plane here, and then throw down an attribute adjust by vector, change your attribute name to P, update your constant values, and then down here, mark post-process and choose whatever attribute you created in this here to use as your blending. So that's basically it. Again, if you need to get UVs for whatever reason, if you're bringing in a complex object that doesn't have them, UV project, or there's UV unwrap tools and things like that, that you can go ahead and create first before doing this attribute from map. But that's it. That's the quick little workflow of how to set up displacement in Houdini. I know it's not just a nice little simple node like you've got over in C4D, but that's how we do it over in Houdini land for the time being. Thanks so much for sticking through all this. If you have any questions, go ahead and comment below. If you like what I'm doing over here, like, subscribe, ring that bell, all that YouTube jargon that I don't even know anymore. But thanks so much. See ya.